Today, we're going to unpack a multi-trillion-dollar question. Why are data centers rapidly becoming the most expensive real estate on Earth? You know, we talk all the time about the cloud, right? We talk about it as if all our photos, our apps, and our AI prompts just live in some weightless, invisible space floating above us. But the reality? The cloud is incredibly heavy. It is anchored right here on Earth by these hyper-expensive, heavily fortified industrial fortresses. And right now, these physical structures are completely rewriting the rules of global real estate.
Okay, let's dive into this because the contrast we're seeing right now is absolutely staggering. On one hand, you have traditional commercial real estate. Picture a beautiful, gleaming Manhattan office tower. Post-pandemic, with the huge shift to remote work, a lot of these traditional spaces are facing dropping values and really high vacancy rates. But on the exact opposite side of the spectrum, you have the completely windless, brutalist architecture of the modern data center. These places are practically bursting at the seams. They're commanding insane premiums, like $660 per square foot, and operating at near total capacity. Turns out, servers make for much more reliable tenants than humans. Capital is just aggressively fleeing the traditional office park and sprinting toward digital infrastructure. And that brings us to this number, 99%. In the major primary markets, data center occupancy is hovering right between 97 and 99%. That is, well, it's effectively zero vacancy. To give you a sense of what that actually does to property values, let's look at a famous carrier hotel in Los Angeles called One Wilshire. It acts as this massive hub for undersea Pacific cables. It recently sold for an astronomical $437.5 million. That breaks down to roughly $660 a square foot. I mean, we are talking about luxury, high-end residential condo pricing, but it's being paid to house server racks and cooling pipes.
Part 1. The AI investment supercycle. So, what exactly is the catalyst driving this unprecedented real estate gold rush? Well, it all comes down to the staggering, worldwide demand for artificial intelligence infrastructure.
To really grasp this supercycle, we have to understand a crucial shift happening behind the scenes in AI right now. It's the transition from training to inference. Up until recently, most data center power was just used to train massive AI models in big, centralized locations. But by 2027, the industry anticipates a huge structural inflection point where inference takes over. Inference is just the actual, daily usage of that AI by millions of people, like you and me asking a chatbot a question. Unlike training, inference generates continuous, around-the-clock demand, and crucially, it requires decentralized data centers located as close to the end users as possible. Because let's face it, nobody likes lag.
Now, building out the physical infrastructure to support this massive global web of AI inference, yeah, it is not cheap. In fact, projections from major research firms estimate that anywhere from $3 trillion to $7 trillion will be required globally by 2030 just to meet this AI demand. Think about that number. This isn't just a tech boom anymore. We are literally in the midst of the largest infrastructure investment supercycle of the modern era. It's actively creating over $1.2 trillion in real estate asset value alone.
Now, what's really interesting about this is that we don't just need more data centers, we need completely different kinds of data centers. AI workloads require incredibly high-density computing, and to keep all those processors from literally melting down, developers have to install these complex liquid-to-chip cooling loops, which right off the bat adds a 10% construction premium. You can see how rapidly development costs are escalating here. The average global cost to build just 1 megawatt of capacity jumped from $7.7 million in 2020 to $10.7 million in 2025, and it's forecast to hit $11.3 million by 2026.
Section 2. The power grid bottleneck. Because honestly, money actually isn't the primary problem here.
It really begs the question. If there are literally trillions of dollars in institutional capital just waiting to be deployed, and tenant demand is off the charts, what is physically stopping developers from just building their way out of this massive supply shortage?
The answer is time. Specifically, 4 years. That is the average wait time in primary data center markets right now just to get a high-voltage connection to the local power grid. In some of the more extremely congested utility queues, that wait can extend up to a decade. You could build the most advanced, futuristic AI facility on the planet, but without a massive, dedicated utility hookup, it's really just a very expensive, empty warehouse.
The source material we're looking at sums up this bottleneck perfectly.
Power availability, rather than land or capital, has emerged as the dominant limiting factor shaping where, when, and how data centers can be developed. Power is the ultimate scarce resource. And because of this massive gridlock, data center operators are increasingly taking matters into their own hands. We're seeing this huge push toward what's called behind-the-meter generation. Basically, developers are bypassing the public utility queue entirely by funding their own on-site power. We're talking natural gas turbines, huge solar arrays with battery storage, or even advanced nuclear reactors.
To really put this power hunger into perspective, and this honestly shocked me when I read it, traditional cloud server racks draw about 10 to 20 kilowatts of power, okay? Specialized AI racks, they pull anywhere from 100 to 500 kilowatts. Because of this extreme density, global data center electricity demand is projected to roughly double by 2030. In the United States alone, data centers could consume an astonishing 11.8% of the country's entire national electricity by the end of the decade. The cloud is heavy, and it is incredibly thirsty.
Section 3. The Rise of Powered Land. This power bottleneck brings us to a fascinating new economic reality.
Think about how traditional real estate has always been valued. It's the old cliché, right? Location, location, location. It's about views, proximity to commuter hubs, foot traffic. Digital real estate completely throws all of that out the window. Today, the ultimate premium is dictated by secured grid access, guaranteed megawatt capacity, and latency speed. If an industrial land parcel lacks an existing or guaranteed high-capacity utility connection, it is increasingly viewed as a liability. Unpowered land is just dirt. Powered land? That is digital gold.
And this brilliantly illustrates how this plays out across premium metropolitan hubs worldwide. In Silicon Valley, vacancy is sitting at around 1.5%. But look at Northern Virginia, which is the world's largest single data center market, by the way. It has a vacancy rate of just 0.3%. It is effectively totally sold out, despite development costs exceeding $10 million per megawatt. And we see similar supply squeezes and massive capital costs in international hubs like Singapore and Tokyo too. This isn't isolated. It's a synchronized, worldwide phenomenon.
Because capacity is so ridiculously scarce right now, the velocity of demand is reaching a fever pitch. In just the first 6 months of 2026, hyperscalers, those are the massive tech giants driving this whole expansion, absorbed a record 25 gigawatts of capacity. Tenants are so absolutely desperate to guarantee their AI infrastructure that they are aggressively pre-leasing space for data centers that won't even be delivered until 2028.
Section 4. The cost to communities. Because building the physical cloud right here on Earth has very real impacts at the local level. The reports highlight several tangible disruptions that communities are dealing with. In densely developed areas, residents are dealing with what's been dubbed the Haymarket hum, this continuous 60-decibel noise coming from massive cooling fans. There's also the loss of local farmland being bought up to make way for these million-square-foot campuses. And on top of that, in some communities adjacent to dense hubs, residential utility bills have surged by up to 267% over a 5-year period just to subsidize the necessary grid upgrades. So the data reveals this massive acceptance gap. While 79% of Americans say they support U.S. leadership in AI, only 14% actually support a data center being developed in their own local community.
And this friction only compounds when we look at the environmental side of the equation. Right now, data center carbon dioxide emissions sit at about 180 million tons today. But under high-growth AI scenarios, that number is projected to climb to 320 million tons by 2030, and it could reach a staggering 500 million tons by 2035. Navigating this immense environmental tension is going to be one of the industry's absolute greatest challenges over the next decade.
So, between the severe lack of available grid power and rising community pushback in those established hubs, developers are being forced to adapt. Currently, a massive 77% of all new capacity under development is located in what the industry calls frontier markets. Since they can't easily build more in places like Northern Virginia or Silicon Valley, developers are pushing into brand new regions, like West Texas, Ohio, and Louisiana, just to find the land and the power they so desperately need.
Which leaves us with this final, really vital question. Every single time you type a prompt into an AI chatbot, it kicks off a chain reaction, a reaction that traces all the way back to a highly specialized, liquid-cooled server rack sitting in a billion-dollar concrete fortress, pulling massive amounts of electricity directly from the grid. So, as we continue to build out the physical footprint of our digital future, what is the ultimate physical limit of our AI ambitions? It's definitely something to think about the next time you access the cloud. Thanks for joining me to dive into this material today and keep questioning the infrastructure that powers our world.